Okay, in this tutorial I'm gonna show you how to build a carousel-like animation in JavaScript. So the first thing we need to do is to create a JavaScript file, and let's take a look at the final product over here. So first off, we need to create a variable, an array indeed, because we need to hold each one of the sources of the images of the icon. So in this case I have 6 different images, PNG images with alpha channel. So I'm gonna hold each one of these sources inside an array. So I'm gonna call for pictures, it can be equal to new array. Okay, so icon with the PNG. So remember, this source is I'm gonna put this one with relative path. So remember, if you have your images in a different folder, you need to put the relative path for each one of the images. I think this. Okay, so let me just replace this thing. String and 6. Okay, so we need the sources of each one of the images. So next I'm gonna create a variable. It's gonna be items. This is gonna hold the pictures, the length of the array. So okay, the next thing we need to do is to create a function that it's gonna place each one of the icons in the carousel. So I'm gonna call it function initCar. Okay, let me do this thing. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is a loop. Items. Okay, and this is gonna loop through each one of these sources, and it's gonna put it in the carousel. So next we need to calculate the X and Y position. So in order to do this, we need to use a little bit of math. So I'm gonna try to explain it over here. So a carousel basically is circle. So if you can see over here, you don't see really a circle over here, but if you can just imagine something like this, we are doing something like this. Okay, we're doing a circle with an X radius different from the Y radius, but basically it's a circle. Okay, so we're gonna base our map in this circle. So the first thing we need to find is the angle of each one of the items. So remember, the circle has 360 degrees, so we need to know how many items we got. In this case we got 6 items. Okay, so we're gonna put 360 degrees divided into the number of items. It's gonna be 6, and this is gonna give us 16. So what this means is just that each 60 degrees we need to put an icon. So the first one is gonna be in 0 over here. The second one is gonna be in 60. The third one is gonna be in 120. The fourth one is gonna be in 180. So we need to do this, and each time the the loop is gonna go through this, it's gonna do something like this. 60 is this number applied by the variable I. It's gonna be equal to the current angle we need to know. So the first time it's gonna be 60. It's gonna be equal to 0. Next time 60. It's gonna be equal to 60. Next time 60, it's gonna be equal to next time 60. Okay, it's gonna be equal to 180. Next time, let me just 60. It's gonna be equal to 40. And the last time, in this case, because we just have 6 items, 60, it's gonna be equal to 300. Okay, so we got each one of the angles we need to know in order to put the icons. So the first one is gonna be here, 0, 60, and you can see over here. But there is one thing: JavaScript doesn't handle degrees. We need to get all this information in radians. So we need to use the radians functions. So in order to convert this part in radians, I'm gonna use math.py, and math.py times 2, it's gonna be equal. It's gonna be the same. Let me write this thing like this, okay? Like 360 degrees. Remember, this is in radians and this is in degrees, okay? So basically, what we need to do here is just like math.py times 2 divided into number of items, and we need to multiply this thing, the variable, okay? So each time the loop goes through this line, it's gonna calculate something like that, like these lines. So I'm gonna just copy and paste this thing over here and hold this value inside a variable. So var, I'm gonna call the variable angle, it's gonna be equal to this thing, okay? So I'm gonna just comment this thing, okay? Then the next thing we need to do is to convert the angle into XY position. So in order to do that, we need to check this graphic, and the X position is going to be the cos of the angle. So the cos of the angle is going to be the distance between this point, and this is going to be the X position, and the Y position is going to be the sin of the angle. That is going to be the distance between this point and this point. Okay, so for bar expose, it's going to be equal to math.cos angle, okay, and same thing for the Y pose. So Y position, it's going to be with sin, and here there is a mistake. Okay, here. So but there is one more thing. This is gonna give us 1 pixel radius carousel, because we're basing our math in the unit circle, okay? So if you want to get the carousel with a variable radius, you need to create a new var called X radius. It's gonna be 200. I'm gonna do the same for the Y radius, okay? Again, we need the 2 different radius, because we can do something like this, and it's what we will do at the end of the process. So here we can see a circle that has X radius. Its X radius, it's the same that the Y radius, but in the final product we are gonna see something like this. So the X radius is gonna be different from the Y radius, okay? So that's why we need 2 different variables for this. Okay, so we need to multiply this thing, because remember, this is gonna give us a number between -1 and 1, and the coast is gonna give us a number between -1 and 1, and the sin the same thing. Okay, so if we just multiply it by the radius, we're gonna have a number between -200 and 200. Okay, so over here the same thing, and I think we're done with the math. This is all the math we need to do in order to get the carousel. Okay, so the next thing is just JavaScript and HTML. The next thing we need to do is to place the images inside the HTML file. So this is our HTML file. I already did this file, but it's really easy to understand. There are three main things you need to know about this file. The first one is the JavaScript include. Again, it's a relative path. The second one is the onload function. Is init car, is this function. This is the function that it's gonna place the first time each one of the items. And the third thing you need to know is this div. This div is the container for the carousel itself. So this div got its own ID, and the ID is content. Okay, so we need this ID in order to put all the icons inside of this object. Okay, so we need to put this object over here, and var content is going to be equal to document dot get element by ID, and here's content. Okay, so because the content is the same each time, we can just put it outside the loop. Okay, so I'm gonna save the file. Next, we need to create a new function that it's gonna create the each one of these items. Each one of these items has its own div with an image tag in it. So why a div and image tag? The div is the one that it's gonna be, we are gonna be repositioning over here, and the image tag is the one that it's gonna be scaling over here. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new function. So let me just show you a template for each one, of these icons. It's something like this: div and div and image tag in it. Okay, so the div is the one that it's gonna be rotating, and the image tag is the one that is gonna be scaling. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this one. I'm gonna create a function. I'm gonna call it new object. Okay, and this is just gonna return HTML code. So in this case, a div and an image tag. So each one of the divs, it's gonna get its own ID, identifier, and its own style, because we need to we need to set the X and Y position with the left and top properties. So for the image, we need to set an ID to and the source file. Okay, so over here we need to put absolute left and top and index and I'm gonna just put width like 100 pixels. Okay, over here, remember the left and top, you need to put it in pixels. Okay, next you need to set up the variables over here. So we need the ID, we need to X position, Y position, index, and the source file. Okay, so the ID is going to be over here. Okay, let me check here. Put from here, 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 and here. Okay, over here I'm gonna put the source. Here I'm gonna put the ID. Over here the ID too. But right now we get the same ID for the image and for the div tag. So we need to make a difference on each one of them. So I'm gonna call the div tag. I'm gonna put object, and over here I'm gonna put image. Okay. So this is the X position, this is going to be the Y position, and this is going to be the C index. Okay, so I think we're done with this function. So we need to call this function, in this case 6 times, one for each icon, for each item in the carousel. So the ID, it's going to be just I, the variable. X, it's going to be expose. Y, it's going to be Y pose. And C, it's just gonna be the parse in of the Y pose. Okay, and the source, it's gonna be pictures I. Okay, so I put this as C index this variable, and it's because if you see over here, we got the circle, and the center of the circle is over here. This is the 0, 0 position. But in the browser, the 0, 0 position is going to be placed in the top left corner. So over here is going to be the center of the browser. So you need to know that if you put the greater Y position, in this case, you need to see the icons bigger, and the smaller the Y position, you need to see the icons smaller. So that's why I'm just putting this, where it is, this variable over here, to avoid weird behaviors. And I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about in a few moments. So right now I'm gonna hold what this function returns over here in object, and I'm gonna put this object inside of this tag. Remember, the content one, it's this div over here. So I'm gonna content dot inner HTML plus equal object. Okay, I'm using plus equal because each time I need to add a new object, I don't need to replace what is inside the content. I need to add a new one, so I need to put plus equal in this case. So I think we're done for the first time. Let me just test the script over here, and it's in TuteCore. Okay, here it is. You are seeing just 2 icons. And why you're seeing 2 icons? And it's because over here is the center of the circle. So it's something like this. Let me just explain you a little bit over here. Something like you are seeing just something like this, a quarter of the circle. In this case, you're seeing just a quarter of the circle over here. So what we need to do, we need to reposition the the circle over here. So in order to do that, we just need to move the container. So over here you can just put a different value in left and top properties. So I'm gonna just put left 300 and top I'm gonna put also 300. I'm gonna save and I'm gonna reload this thing. Okay, 300. Okay, reload. So here is the circle over here. So you can put as many icons as you want just by changing, but adding or deleting items inside this array. So let me just copy and paste again this thing twice. So we're getting 12 icons. I'm gonna reload and here it is. You can see 12 icons. And again you can see 18 icons. I'm gonna reload and here you can see 18 icons over here in a perfect circle. Now I'm gonna show you about the X radius and Y radius. I'm gonna decrease the Y radius and I'm gonna show you how it's gonna look. So I'm gonna put just 80 and reload. So you can see we decrease the Y radius and it's getting the carousel type. So also we can put a greater number over here like 300, reload, and you can see the carousel over here. So I'm gonna put just 200 and I think 80 is a good number. I'm gonna just delete all the extra icons I just put it. I'm gonna reload. Okay, we got 6 icons over here. So the next thing we need to do is to animate the icons. So in order to animate the icons, we need to reposition each one of the divs. So I need to create a new function. It's gonna be called, I'm gonna call rotate core. So this function is gonna recalculate the X and the Y position. So I'm gonna need a loop similar to this. Okay. And next thing we need to do is to get the angle of each one of the icons. So in this case, I'm gonna create a new array that it's gonna hold all of the angles for each one of the icons. So I'm gonna call angles. It's gonna be a new array, and the length it's gonna be items. Okay. So I'm gonna just replace this thing over here. Okay. It's gonna be I. This thing over here and over here. So basically what we're doing here is just calculating the angle, current angle, and storing this angle inside of a position of an array. So we can get this angle back over here. Okay, so I'm gonna put this over here again, and I'm gonna add some degrees. So in this case we're adding radians. Remember, plus equal, sure, that's 0.8. And why this number is so smaller? Okay, it's because it's radians. Remember, it's not degrees. So I'm gonna add just a number that it's really small, like this one. So I'm gonna just, for you to remember, I'm gonna put here radians. Okay, so with this new angle we need to recalculate the x and the y position, and it's gonna be the same as this thing. Okay, here we are recalculating the new positions based on this new angle. Okay. Next we need to put the new position inside of each one of the items. So yeah, object is going to be var object is going to be equal to document that get element by ID, and you can see over here the ID of each one of the divs is going to be object and the variable. So object and the variable. So here this variable is holding the each one of the divs. So the next thing we need to do is to call object dot style that, in this case, top. Let me do the first left. It's going to be equal to the new position. So expose, and remember you need to put it in pixels. So I'm going to put pixels over here, and the same thing for the y position. So y is top, and it's going to be y position, and it's in pixels. Okay, so I think we're almost done with this thing. So the next thing we need to do is to call this function each 5 milliseconds. So I'm gonna create over here and set interval. I'm gonna call this function inside this set interval thing. So over here, and I'm gonna call it each 5 milliseconds. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is just first positioning the icons and creating the icons, and next calling this function each 5 milliseconds and repositioning all the icons. Okay, so but basically everything, all the math is just in these 3 plus these 3 lines. So all the math is just 6 lines of code. Okay, so let me just reload this thing, and here it is. You can see the basic carousel, and as I told you before, we need the C axis, C index, because we can see here a weird stuff, and we can see even weirder stuff if we put more icons. So let me put again more icons over here. Put 12 and 18 icons. So let me reload, and you can see over here, here this icon, it's really weird because sometimes it's one way and the other time it's just, I don't know, I think it's really weird behavior. So in order to sort this kind of behavior, you need to put this thing in the C index again. So I'm gonna put it over here and over here. That C index, it's gonna be equal to y parse in of y pose, and I think this thing is gonna sort this weird behavior. So let me reload, and you can see here in the front and the back where when the C index changes. So you can see always a good animation in this case. So the next thing we need to do is to rescale the image itself. So let me just put an extra lines over here. Okay. So over here, after you reposition each one of the icons, you need to rescale each one of the images. So next thing you need to do is to do something similar to this. Let me copy and paste this one over here, and this is going to be image, and over here it's going to be image. Okay, so basically this variable it's holding the image tag that is in the div tag. So we need to rescale this one. So next thing we need to do is to calculate the scale factor. So there is a function that it's gonna return a number between 0 and 1. So basically what I'm doing here is some sort of normalizing the scaling. So here it is, var it's gonna be equal to. So in this case, because let me explain this way. You can put the center of the carousel just by placing the container in the center you want, or just by putting this thing in 0, and over here you can create new variables and do it programmatically. So center x, it's gonna be again 300, and center y, var center y, it's gonna be 300 again. So the only thing you need to do is to add this value to each one of the positions. So I'm gonna try to do this thing, plus center x over here. I'm gonna copy and paste center y, and let me just copy and paste these two lines over here, okay. So if I reload, I think everything is gonna be the same. Oh, let me just check over here. I think there is an error over here. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's because of this line. Okay. Okay, it's the same. So you can center your carousel, or you can place your carousel just in here, changing these values, or in here, changing these values. So it's the same if I put over here 300 and 300 and 0 over here. Just play with it, and I'm gonna put 300 here and 300 here. And if I reload this thing, it's the same. Okay, so you can play with this kind of thing. So next, we are putting the center x and y 0. Okay, so next thing we need to do is calculate the scale factor. So first thing, we need to calculate delta. It's gonna be equal to a function that is gonna return us a number between 0 and 1. So as I said before, we're normalizing the scale factor. So this is gonna be something like this. It's gonna be y pose. Okay, y pose. I'm gonna put this center y. In this case, it's gonna be 0, but anyway, I think it's a good idea to put this thing over here, just if you want to center your carousel with these variables. So I'm gonna put center y, and I'm gonna add radius y. Okay, I'm gonna divide this thing to 2 times radius y. Okay, and why this thing is gonna return a number between 0 and 1. Okay, so let's do the 2 cases. The first one, it's gonna be when let me check over here, when the icon is in the top of the y axis, and the second one is gonna be the one that it's gonna be in the bottom of the y-axis, so over here. So let me just put this thing a bit more. Let me just put like 35. Okay, so this one it's gonna be something like the y position of the bottom one. It's gonna be equal, so the y pose from the bottom one, it's gonna be equal to the center in y. In this case, it's gonna be 0 plus the radius y. Okay, and for the top one, I'm gonna put top one. It's gonna be the center in y minus the radius minus this thing. Okay, so this is gonna be the limit for each one of the icons. So this is gonna be the two cases we want to have in mind over here. So if this pose is the y pose bottom one, so I'm gonna just copy and paste this thing 2 times. I'm gonna replace y pose for this. Okay, so we can see over here that y pose is the bottom one. The bottom one is gonna be just this one, and this one it's gonna just cancel, and this is gonna be equal to ry plus ry, 2 times ry divided into 2 times ry. Okay, so this is gonna be 1. And the second case, it's gonna be this one, where the y pose is gonna be the top one. So this is the top one. Okay, so this one is gonna be cancelled with this one, and this one is gonna be cancelled with this one. So this is gonna be equal to 0 divided into 2 times ry, and this is gonna be equal to 0. Okay, so that's why this function is gonna return a number between 0 and 1. So I'm gonna put this thing into a comment just for you to know. Okay, so we got this thing between 0 and 1. Okay, so if we just multiply this thing over here, just let me object that style, okay, that okay, it's gonna be equal to delta. Okay, one more thing we need to do over here. We need to know the original size of each one of the items. So in order to do that, first I need to create a new function over here. I'm gonna call function. I'm gonna call it item size. Okay. And this function is gonna just do a loop. It's gonna loop through each one of these items, and it's gonna hold the source itself, and it's gonna hold the image itself indeed. So I'm gonna create a new array over here. I'm gonna copy and paste this one, and I'm gonna just call it images. Okay, so images it's gonna be equal to new image. Okay, and images dot source, it's gonna be equal to the picture source. Okay, so picture, okay, I over here. So what we're doing here is just creating a new image for each one of the icons and holding each one of the images inside of the array. So the next thing we need to do after that, we need to call this function, okay? So we need to call this function, and we need to change the HTML. So we need to put this function when the HTML is loaded. So I'm gonna replace this one here. So the first thing the JavaScript is gonna do is call this function. So this function is gonna loop through the icons, and you can see each one of them over here, and holding the image inside of this array. So we are gonna use this array over here. Why? Because we need to know the dimension of the icons. So we're gonna multiply delta in this case. That. Okay, and remember this needs to be in pixels. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing for the width. Okay, and over here I'm gonna do the same thing. Okay, so delta is gonna be a number. Remember, it's gonna be a number between 0 and 1. Okay, so if I do this thing over here, let me reload. Okay, yeah, let me just put again here 5 milliseconds. Okay, you can see the icons fading away over here. And why? It's because over here, remember, the number is gonna give us 0. In the white post top one, it's gonna be over here. So here we are multiplying 0 by the dimensions, so it's gonna be 0. So here the dimensions, over here it's gonna be 0. Okay, and here it's gonna be the original dimensions because we're multiplying by 1. So the next thing we need to do is to get this variable and rescaling the variable between non-zero value and 1. So for this purposes, I'm gonna use this function. So it's gonna be equal to. Okay, so okay, what I'm doing here is just doing some math over here, and I'm doing a rescaling function. How this is gonna work? Okay, I'm gonna explain this over here. So, okay, we're basing this thing, this math, in between 0 and 1. Okay, delta is a number between 0 and 1. Okay, so like this explanation, we need to get the two limits, so 0 and 1. So if delta is equal to 0, so this function is gonna be 0 plus 1 divided into 2, and this is gonna be 1/2. This is gonna be equal to 0.5. Okay, and for the other limit, it's gonna be 1 plus 1 divided to 2, and this is gonna be 2 divided into 2, and this is gonna be 1. Okay, so delta originally it's a number between 0 and 1, but we need to rescale it in order to get some dimensions over here, and we're putting the new delta between 0.5 and 1 just with this function. Okay, so I'm gonna put this explanation over here. And what if you don't want to get to rescale just a half? You want to rescale just, for example, 0.75. Okay, so the only thing you need to do is to do this function and just replace this one 3 and this one 4. Okay, and that's all. We're gonna play with this in a bit. So we're calculating this one. So let me just reload this thing, and you can see here this size is gonna be the half of the size of the one of the front icons. Okay, so let me play with this and put just 3 and 4 over here. I think it's not gonna be a big difference, but you can see it over here. Oh yeah, there's a difference. So this is gonna be 0.75 times the one of the front. Okay, so let me just decrease the Y radius. I'm gonna put like 15. Okay, and here is carousel. And let me just get rid of the extra icons over here. Okay, here it is. We got a perfect carousel animation. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is to attach a function to each one of the items. Okay, so we want to trigger the function when you clicked the icon. So we need to put over here where you create the object on click event. On click event, it's gonna be equal to a function. So I'm gonna call it click item. Okay, and this one it's gonna receive just the ID. So ID. Okay, I'm gonna write this function over here. ID function. Okay, and I'm gonna write just one line of code over here, but first I need to create a new array. A functions array. It's gonna be a new array, and here I'm gonna call it func1. Okay, and I'm gonna write one function for each one of the items. So let me copy and paste this. Okay, let me replace this thing. And I need to write each one of these functions. So let me start with this one. Okay, and this is gonna be just an alert. So item 1. Okay, so let me just copy and paste this thing 5 more times. Okay, and let me replace these numbers. Okay, 5 and just one left, 6. And the easy thing over here in eval functions sub ID. Okay, so basically when we click each one of the items, it's gonna trigger this function, and this function is gonna get this ID, the ID of each one of the items, and it's gonna eval the function inside of the functions array. Okay, so I think that's all. Just let me test it one more time. I'm gonna reload this thing. Click again here, the alert, and here the alert, the item number 1. Okay, I think that's all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial.